Hi everyone and welcome back. Welcome to our training sessions, and in here we are covering AWS CDK. So in the last video we were able to create a AWS stack using SQS. Now I'm going to create a couple of more examples to just get our hands dirty with AWS CDK. So I just copied this demo app into some examples. Okay, let's say I will call it as a simple lambda CDK. Okay, and here we are going to play with lambda, how it works and all those things. So we are going to change the name of this stack to just simply API lambda stack. Okay, and here also we can also pass some more attributes. Let's say I'm just passing the stage. Stage means your environment, like dev, production, or any other environment in which you wanted to deploy your lambda, because there can be multiple environments. And here stage we need to pass in this demo app state tag. So here I will just change the name to lambda stack. It is CDK prop, so we can define an another interface. Export interface lambda props, which extends CDK stack props, and here we can pass stage as a string. So this type for this is lambda props. So lambda app stack. Okay, and the stack is undefined. This is required. I mean, this should be optional. If stage is not being passed, then we will just use the default stage. And here what we are doing, we are just going to talk about how we can just create a simple lambda. Okay, so what we are doing here is, let's say const simple lambda function equal to new my function. Okay, this is NodeJS function. I mean, there are many ways to create a lambda. We will also use other different ways of creating this lambda. So this and your function name. So lambda, and here you can pass the stage. Okay, you are passing the stage from this class. So stage can be the lambda. Let's say the API lambda development, API lambda production. And here you can access the stage from the props lambda function. And this is the constructor, right? What it takes, lambda function is node.js function, and then we will pass all the arguments. Okay, now in the arguments, what all it takes, memory size is, let's say 1024 default, not much, we are not doing any much computation. Timeout cdk dot duration, and duration dot second is 5 seconds. Okay, TypeScript is our good friend, which is telling us, okay, what are the types we need to use. So memory size, timeout, runtime. Runtime is important because that is telling this lambda, okay, this lambda is going to use the runtime node.js. Okay, and here you can see, you can specify node.js 16. That's good. I mean, we can use node.js 18, and then this is the handler. Okay, so what do I have is, I already have this simple lambda, and the handler name is, the function name is main. So the same I need to specify, because this is the handler which I'm executing. So the handler is simply inside a string, that's a main function. And then entry point. Okay, what is the currently we are not talking about a big lambda which is representing a REST APIs and all. It's just like a simple function which is showing simple hello world. Path dot join, and here directory name, and the path of the lambda function. Timeout, runtime, handler, and the entry point. I mean, which file? Here we are just deploying a simple plain lambda function which is just inside of one file. Otherwise, once we have a REST API and whole microservice, we need to upload the whole assets or the zip file because it's not a single file. And you will be having multiple npm dependencies. So same happens with the Python or any other programming language. Either you write a simple inline, a single file function, or just write a big app and then you just upload a zip. Because when we see the lambda function, either you can just write a manually code or you can upload a zip for that. Okay, so this is our stack, API lambda stack, and then we also can populate this stage environment variable, put stage equal to development. And now this is our simple lambda function. This is just a simple construct. Okay, so we can also see what we are getting. So we can get the lambda function ARN and we can put that inside a console out. So for now we just do npm run CDK deploy. So as we have changed the folder name, we need to change the definition here also from demo app to lambda app. Now if I do, because this is CDK JSON auto generated, and your CDK deploy commands will look into this file to deploy your lambda or your particular stack and the constructs. So now I will do npm run CDK deploy. What it will do is it will execute this command npx tsnode prefix, and here you can see inside this bin we have lambda app, API lambda stack, and here we are passing the account and region, and here you need to give permission to create a service role and the lambda. And this is just a simple tiny code we have written. This is using AWS Lambda, and this is just sending an event, logging event, and saying okay, successful lambda invocation. Okay, once it is deployed using CDK deploy, we can also destroy the stack using another simple command which is npm run CDK destroy. This will remove this particular stack. So currently this stack is in the creation, so we can check this on our browser. So here you can see that we got the lambda API ARN. Okay, so our lambda resource has been created and this is a particular stack. Now you may do some changes on this particular stack and deploy it again. These changes will be reflected. So what we will do for now is CDK destroy. That will just destroy the stack which we have created. This is just a simple lambda. We will see the different ways to create a lambda. And here you can see this simple lambda stack is just using this NodeJS function constructs and creating this lambda. We are passing stage as an environment variable, so you can deploy this application on different environment like development, production, staging, and it is just deploying this simple file. It is asking, do you want to delete this particular stack? I said yes. So it will be just delete in progress. It will first delete this constructs. We have the lambda function inside it, and then it will delete this particular stack. So all the resources created inside this CloudFormation will be deleted. And whenever you execute these CDK commands, you will see this CDK out file generated, right? This contains all the CloudFormation resources. CDK JSON is just like a local file which is used by CDK commands which we are executing, like what needs to be included, what needs to be excluded when it is deploying your application. Okay, so this is just about simple lambda function. Now here it's not like just only one way to create a lambda. There are other ways, like simply you can just simply say new lambda function. Okay, we can get lambda from here, AWS lambda. So you can just do lambda.function, and here also you can pass, okay, what is the function name? Let's say I'm just passing my function name is API lambda 2, and I can just pass the environment like stage. And here you need to pass the same arguments. Okay, I think it's like memory size 1024, or you can specify the runtime. So I can copy a couple of things from there. Runtime timeout. Okay, maybe something is missing. We will add it. And then the code, from where you are going to import the code definition. So it is lambda dot code, I guess, lambda dot code dot from assets, like from which folder, if you're like bundling, then from which folder I can get the code. Path dot join current directory name, and then what is the lambda function name? I mean, directory name is maybe a lambda handler. Okay, so this is how you can also create a lambda. It's just using the NodeJS function. This is the CDK toolkit construct which we are getting from. So this is how we are importing in the AWS CDK version 2. This is the lambda function. We are getting lambda, and then we are creating the function. Okay, so deploying this will be a little different. I mean, here you can see it was creating a Docker container, creating the environment, and then trying to deploy this lambda function. So we'll just remove this. So from directory we need to go up, and then there is a source directory we are trying to deploy. Right, so what we will do is npm run cdk deploy. Destroy we have already done. CDK deploy. So what it knows, it's already know that this is the lambda assets. From this it needs to pick. Okay, we will be using this only to create our lambda functions and deploy. Node.js function was just for the demo purpose, and here we are passing the stage environment, and you can see this lambda function name also should be somewhere. Okay, it is still showing undefined. Why? I am passing a stage as a props. So maybe let's see what is our stack. Export.env stage. So export stage development, and I will do deploy again. So this stage is passed as a props. Okay, let's see this now. We should be getting the stage as a development, and the lambda function name is development. So we are good. So now it is deploying this lambda function, and then we'll be able to see this lambda functions on the AWS console, how it really looks like. Currently it's not bundling anything. It's just like a simple lambda function which it is getting from the source folder, which is really not the right way. It will just get everything whatever is inside a source folder. But let's say when we are writing a microservice, obviously when we do build, it generates the build output, right? That is a folder, or that is a zip file that we need to upload as assets for the lambda, because your lambda function may have some dependencies. Currently it's just like a simple function, but it also depends on AWS lambda function, and that's an external dependency which we have added for the typings, for the type definitions, right? So let's see how we can bundle this and then upload it to the AWS for the lambda function. Let's see that in the AWS console how it really. This is how we were able to create our first lambda. Now we will see another approach to create a lambda function. Let's say I will call it as a lambda function 2. and here we are going to use new lambda dot function. This is just another way of creating the lambda function. Instead of using Node.js function, we can also write something like this. So new lambda functions, and the name of the lambda function is, let's say, API lambda 2, and we can pass the stage also. And all our properties. So properties are simple. Here what we are going to do is we are going to get the code from assets folder. The simple folder is source, from which we are going to get the code, and the function name, whatever you wanted to put, simple API lambda 2, and the handler here is index.handler, because index is the file and the function name is the handler. Now this was being done differently. It was creating a Docker container and creating the whole Node.js environment and deploying it. Here we are just passing the source code, to which it will be considered as a lambda function. So here we cannot write a TypeScript code. If we are writing TypeScript code, then obviously we need to bundle it and we need to archive it and add all the dependencies and all. So we are just creating a simple function, index.js. This is just our simple lambda function, nothing much. And here this is what we are going to deploy. So lambda app stack, this is our first lambda function, and this is our second lambda function. And here the handler is index.handler, and it is getting the code from the assets source. Okay, so we need to comment it out because we don't have this TypeScript file right now. So we are not using this particular construct or Node.js function. We just have this simple lambda function. So I will just export the stage, npm run cdk deploy. So it should be able to deploy my another lambda function from the source, and inside a source we have just a .js file. If we write a TypeScript file, because then you need to have all the dependencies bundled properly, and then that is like totally a different set of tasks we will do when we write the simple service. Obviously that contains the dependencies, TypeScript code, bundling, and all these things are involved. And what we are going to deploy, once you just simply bundle the node modules, all the dependencies, you get a zip file, and that zip file you deploy as a lambda. And then you also specify the handler. Okay, inside there is an index file that contains this function name handler. Here also you see inside this index.js, the function name is the handler. So Node.js runtime, the lambda runtime will know, okay, inside this folder there is index.js, and that contains the handler as a function. And we can see something happening here, like all the lambda functions will be deployed here. Our function name from this stack is the lambda node. Okay, lambda node, and the stack name is API lambda 2. This is just a construct name. Okay, fail to create. Lambda name already exists. Okay, let's change it to API lambda node. And deploy it again. If the resource already exists, it won't create it again here, because we might have changed the function name. So the thing is, if you change this stack name here, the construct name API lambda 3, and you change and you are not changing the function name, then obviously it will say, okay, with this particular construct the lambda function already exists. So now I have changed this one and both this one, so it will create this as a fresh lambda function with this, and it will deploy it. So let's see the output, and then we will test this simple lambda function. It is a plain and simple lambda function, just printing some hello world message. Right, this simple lambda function just returning a JSON object, and you can attach an API gateway to this lambda function, so you will get this JSON output from some REST API. So we can see some progress happening at the cloud formation. So we can see this is because it is updating this particular stack, API Lambda stack. So this is our stack name, this is updating it, and these are the constructs. So all the resources, you can see this function name has been created now. We can go to the Lambda and see API Lambda node, and you can see a simple function has been created on the AWS console, and you can test it also because it's plain JavaScript. We didn't write any TypeScript code, so we were not having any issues with the bundling for now. So this is just a simple Lambda function. Either you can deploy a simple Lambda function using Node.js function, right? Oh, because here we were writing TypeScript code, and obviously then it requires bundling that and compiling, bundling, and then creating the final outcome, and then just uploading that as an archive. So it is totally happening in the different scale. So if you have seen that, because when we were deploying this container, it is creating a Docker container and then doing all these stuff to deploy this particular Lambda resource. But here it is just a plain Lambda function, simple Node.js function we are deploying, so there is no need of containers and all. So Node.js function is just a one way, and the Lambda node function is just another way of creating a Lambda function using AWS CDK. It's just all about playing with Lambda functions, understanding these different settings you can set. Here you can also set the environments. So I mean the environments are all the environments, runtime environments you want, because there are many attributes in this Lambda function. If you see, if I talk about configurations, like what all environment variables you have, which you want to add in the process.env, which can be helpful at the runtime for the Lambda function, and all the general configurations like timeout, memory, storage, all these you can provide in this constructs. Memory size, environments, in the environments, let's say the stage, here I can pass this stage whatever I'm getting, so this will get populated in the environments here inside the configurations. Then permissions like, let's say this Lambda function needs to read and write through to the S3 or SNS or SQS, then you can add permissions to this Lambda resource. So then you will just use this construct dot grant invoke URL, grant permissions. I think there are many things you can just add. Add permission, right? So all these things are there which will add permissions. Like if you want to add event source, if this Lambda is a Lambda trigger, then you can attach a S3 bucket or SQS or SNS as an event source, so that whenever you put something on the S3 bucket, this Lambda automatically gets triggered. Or you can attach an API gateway to this Lambda, so you can expose this Lambda function to the outside world through HTTP mapping, like HTTP get put post on the API gateway endpoint will invoke this particular Lambda. So all those things we will see in the demos first to understand all those concepts.